So, how do you two come to collaborate on something like this?
Yeah, there's a part that is very much synchronicity at work. I do feel that, this project, I myself never intended to. The treaty matters. I didn't feel that it was something that I was a part of. But I think what we say back home, Tunkashila, creator, it just kind of kept pushing me in the right direction. And the more that I got to meet people that were going to help bring this story forward, the more that I knew I was on the right path. And then when I met Laura, she cut a scene, the Western scene, where I think Doris Day's singing about the Black Hills. Once she saw, when she made a little sketch about that, and that's when I knew that we were going to do something compelling and try to do something with as much care and responsibility that we could. And I just knew from that moment on.
I hate going after Jesse because he's so well spoken, but I remember our first meeting. I think we were both really nervous at undertaking trying to do justice to a story this long and this big. But yeah, I kind of second what Jesse said. I've been interested in, I think, resistance movements and like working on projects about resistance movements. But when we met, it felt like it was kind of fated, and this is what we're supposed to be doing, I think.
Jesse, can you talk about your family in terms of this, this history that you're trying to tell?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a product of the conflict that's in this film. On my dad's side, the name Shortbull goes back to my great-great-grandfather. And he was in a Wajaje band of Oglala and Sichangu, Rosebud and Pine Ridge. And he very much believed in Crazy Horse belief that treaty was something to distrustful. And he witnessed a lot of atrocities during the times of warfare, during Red Cloud's War, leading up to Little Bighorn, which he was present. And on my mom's side, who were very poor immigrants come to the United States and were kind of thrust into this land that is now South Dakota. And my grandfather on my mother's side was a soldier under Terry who came across a Little Bighorn about a day or so after when Custer was wiped out. So two of my grandfathers were on both sides of the fence, and were enemies at one time. And that's just how funny life works sometimes, that now I'm kind of interwove a product of both of that and that struggle. But I will say that growing up around Pine Ridge and Rosebud, that's where I definitely feel my blood is most at home. And to be amongst my relatives there, and that's my family connection to it.
When you started making it, Jesse, did you talk to family members about what you wanted to do, and what kind of reactions did you get?
It's still a very difficult thing. In fact, I have yet to have any of my family. It's hard because on one side, there's this part that some of my relatives don't like, that they see danger. So putting yourself out there, putting this out there could lead to trouble. There's kind of a reluctance to engage in this story. And then on my mom's side of the family, I know that a lot of them are happy that I'm doing things like this, But I also know that there is also a discomfort because looking at the history is difficult. So it's kind of a bizarre place to be in. But I think at the end of the day, when they see that, Laura and I are not trying to say, hey, this is your fault, so you fix this. We're not trying to say that to people. Then I think that, they can kind of look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, even if they have conflicts about the story.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be easy when you two are assembling this and you're going through all this archival material that's just so awful. I mean, that can't have been fun. Although you get some humor out of it. I mean, a little bit.
I think it's tough because I think editing this, I would cry often at different places because I think that to edit it, I had to understand it in a way that where it's in me, I can send it back out, and trying to understand it is impossible. I mean, it's it's impossible to try and understand like all of the different terrible things that have happened. But both of us, I think especially when we were talking with people in Pine Ridge, like Macabre Black Elk, whose mother is in this, said to me that when all the films about Pine Ridge specifically or about this issue always portray these negative futures, negative outcomes, negative present, it's this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I think that even though it was very sad, I was definitely crying. It's not a happy movie. I think still at the end we wanted it to be uplifting because there are enough films that show that Pine Ridge is impoverished in ways and that it's tough to live there. But we wanted to show, I think, the other side as well.
And well, I mean, the cinematography does a good job of kind of bringing that transcendent, peaceful quality. Like you just from the beginning, you see what's beautiful and majestic and peaceful about this. Can you talk about what you wanted the cinematography to be? That it wasn't going to be postcard pictures, but something deeper.
Yeah. What I'll say first is, again, this is driven by these amazing heroic voices. But Laura and I also wanted to try and make the land a character. And what I think we wanted it to speak in its own language through the image. And I think that sort of philosophy, and with the amazing talent of our cinematographer, Kevin Phillips, who was able to kind of take the raw ideas that Laura and I were throwing at him as far as how can we make this land pop? How can we make everything pop? How can we really be innovative in that sort of way? And he just felt it through us, and he, too, being out in the land, I think also helped him understand everything that we wanted to do to try and make this as beautiful as possible.
And then the editing. I mean, the thing about the images is that the way they're cut together, it makes all that archival pop culture stuff look even more ridiculous. And I mean, that's the beautiful thing about the juxtaposition of those.
I think there's something about, thank you. I think there's something about the approach that we wanted to take was you're trying to change people's minds, I think, or get people to see things in a new light very quickly in 2 hours. And so I think part of these two things work hand in hand. It's looking at the ridiculousness of the archival and the Hollywood that we're all kind of familiar with, but maybe we've never thought about it this way, and pairing that with this like kind of quiet dignity of the land. And we were hoping those two things would work in tandem to produce an effect.
And then the voices. I mean, like, how do you pick who to be in this, Jesse?
Yeah, well, that's the luxury, I guess, that I had being very close to this story. People like Milo, the older gentleman, Candy, Alex, Crystal. I've always had the blessing of witnessing their amazing work over the years. I never intended to, like rule them out, but I think that there's such again, this is such a complex history, and ever since the time of warfare, Custer, defeat of Custer, Red Cloud's War, massacres in 1860, there always have been people that have kept the treaty first and foremost this entire time, from the day that pen was put to paper till now. There's always been people carrying that mantle, and the unfortunate thing is that we'll never know a lot of their names. They were never acknowledged. They were never, but they held on and still continue to held on. And so I don't ever want to say, well, this person can say it better than that person. But we wanted to look at it like a quilt. Who are just the threads? Who are some of the threads that we could kind of gather a cross section that could showcase the beauty of our culture? Whether or not they are like Milo, somebody who's very active in the treaty, upholding it through traditional governance, or if it's somebody like Alex who just heeded the call to be courageous without, having a real role in this, but yet she still felt to be courageous to do something for the people. And so we wanted to find the threads that kind of represented the whole quilt, so to speak. And some of those people came to us. And there was, again, this kind of a mysterious process that certain voices stood out or would start to come and make themselves.
The only thing I'll add is that one of the things that we were both very, we were just discussing outside, we were both very excited about trying to include was Layli's poetry, was using Layli's words in here. And she was not, in the beginning, was a little suspicious and wanted to make sure we were making the right kind of project. But she was also Jesse's professor. So that helped, yeah.
So what do you hope people take away from this?
Yeah, I know that there's, call for land, call for justice. But I know that times right now, we're a lot of violence, a lot of bad news. What I really want people to see is there is something really special about our indigenous nations. And there has to be a way to try to find some sort of path to enhance a lot of our relatives' quality of life. I am not satisfied with the quality of life for our relatives back home in Pine Ridge. I'm very upset that young people bear the brunt of the hardship. So if nothing else, I just want to show that this is a place worth loving, and everybody has a role that we could do in some regards to try to advocate for better things. And hopefully that makes things better for all of us.
If we assume that when you make a movie, you're changed by the end of it in some way and think differently, but is there some way you've changed from at the end of making this movie? You can both answer if you want.
Yeah,
At the same time? Yeah.
The sovereignty of the tribe, I look at more how precious it is and how easily it could be taken away. And that's the biggest thing that I learned from this. And then also just, again, those people who this was never a relic of paper. This treaty was never an antique. It was never something to scrap. It was the intention that it was supposed to be. Our people kept up their end of the bargain. And it's always been active on our side. We've always held it in the highest regard on our side. And that's something that I really try not to take for granted from here on out.
And I just want to, I think the thing I'm saying is both an answer to your last question, which is what I hope people take away, and also what sort of changed in me through the process. And that is that as a non-Indigenous person, I think before I entered this project, I was cynical. I was much more pessimistic about the future, about the present, and being involved in some of these actions, being at the protests when they dropped the flag on July 4th. I mean, working towards what Jesse and I have started calling like a radical optimism, I think for me has made me a happier person and made me think that a lot of things are possible and that it is just a mindset. After screenings like this, people come up to us and they say, you don't really think the government's going to give land back, right? You know, and I think that they're definitely not if we don't think it's possible. And so I think this has expanded my imagination, made me, think more positively and work towards that optimism. And I hope that that's what other people take from it too.
We'd like to see if anybody has questions. So let's see. I think Armando's out there. Let's see. Anybody have a question? Right here. There's somebody going to come with a microphone.
What made you format it into sections? How did you decide to divide it the way you did to prepare the film?
That's a great question, because I think finding structure for this was a process. Original edits of this film were over 3.5 hours long, and everyone was yelling at me about it. And I think that the three parts and the words kind of emerged naturally out of studying those different periods. Like there are shifts in policy, where they say, it's interesting after Wounded Knee in 1890, before that, it's like, Native people in America are, they're savage. They're going to do all these terrible things to you. And after 1890, when we see that the military's gunned down a bunch of women and children, they're too poor. They can't be helped. Like, there's nothing that can be done. And so these things really came out of the material itself. And reparation as the last, for me, is not just reparations, what we're discussing, but also these people going back to the land, returning to the land, and repairing like their own broken connections with it. So.
While I was watching the movie,
hold on, there's a microphone coming to you.
Thank you. While I was watching the movie, I couldn't help thinking the parallels between what's going on with Israel. Do you have any comments on this with the Palestinians? It's so timely with what's going on there in the Middle East. I'm sure you've thought of this.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is since Laura and I started this, and I'm not too familiar the dynamics that go on there. But as we started this, it started to show itself, and started to. I started to see it where, as before, it was something that was not in my purview. I think that in lieu of a recent event, and it really makes the heart feel sad and sick. And the one thing that I would say to really consider, and I don't even know how to put this, but I look back at home and the hardship that we still wrestle with in Pine Ridge, it almost seems like America said, oh, the war's over, okay, all right, done. But yet, it's still very much alive. And some of these processes of pushing people, all of these things, dispossession, forcing. It's really hard. And I think that in order for us to move forward, we have to really start thinking about what are these things at work? And are these things really sustainable? Colonization, all of these things. And I really don't know the answer, but you're right. I mean, it troubles me, and I don't even know how to express it.
Hello. My question is, from the way this revolutionary film doc was told, what made you want to do it in 3 parts?
I don't have a good answer for you because I myself really like the number 3. No, I think that, there's something to be said for, we're talking about over like almost 600 years of history there. And I was looking for a foothold. I think we're both looking for footholds. I think that there's a version of this film that's 10 hours long, that we would love to make. I think in terms of putting this together, we wanted to make a beautiful work of art, but one thing that Jesse said that I believe in really strongly is also we wanted to make it a tool. And sometimes that is, you're making something that you think is beautiful that represents the story, but also people maybe need a little bit more structure. People need it to be 2 hours. Thank you for sitting through a 2-hour-long documentary.
No, but it was great. 3 parts, and it was, like you said, a revolutionary tool.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, and in this world where America's having a hard time dealing with its past, movie is as necessary as it gets. So thank you both, Jesse and Laura, for making it and bringing it to us, and
Thank you for
especially on
coming.
Indigenous Peoples Day too. So
Thank you.
Thank you.